Brady Quinn, co-host of Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, alongside LeVar Arrington and Jonas Knox. And you can catch him weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, the show that precedes ours. Also, the big noon kickoff on Fox in Texas. It'll be Oklahoma at number 13, Baylor. Brady, thanks for joining us. Let me start with what you saw last night. Did the Dolphins provide a blueprint? We love to do this. A blueprint on how to shut down Lamar Jackson.
I'm not willing to go that far. I think what we witnessed, though, and I think one of the things that we've noticed if you've paid attention to the Baltimore Ravens in the second half of the seasons with Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman calling plays is, I don't know if it's a matter of teams figuring them out, but it always seems like that offense hits a wall in the second half of the season. They usually get off to some pretty fast starts, and then they start to kind of fizzle out. And I don't know if that's like a Greg Roman thing when you comb back through the years and feel like from some of the different teams he's been to, like they haven't had a second act or they haven't been able to adjust. But clearly last night was one of those examples of Miami felt really comfortable playing a variation of coverages, kind of some off-man coverage, mixing in some zone, but putting pressure on Lamar. And the Ravens offense, Lamar did not handle it well. And it also seems like when he gets in situations where he starts to press, he's literally feeling the pressure. But I just think also because of that point in the game where they needed to come back, they had to do something. I feel like he almost puts himself in some compromising situations, forces throws, makes some bad decisions. I think we've seen that from him from time to time. But so I don't know if it's a blueprint necessarily. More so is it's just kind of been what we've seen from the Ravens, offensively speaking, at least, since Lamar Jackson's been quarterback in the second half of the season, and we're starting to venture into that territory.
And I'm also wondering about the decision. Jacoby Brissett gets banged up, goes out. Tua is the emergency backup, but then he goes in. He's healthy enough to play, but he wasn't healthy enough to start. I'm confused with that whole situation, Brady.
Join the club. Yeah, I've been confused now for 2 years with Brian Flores and the decisions with Tua in particular. I mean, last year when he'd yank him out at the end of the game or after a bad first half, I mean, this is a guy you drafted in the top 10, the first round pick. You've got to see what he can do to finish games or end games. I would say this last year about him, and yet they just put Ryan Fitzpatrick in and let him be the closer. And I understand that Brian Flores wants to win games and he wants to do what's best for his team to win games, but then shouldn't Fitzpatrick been starting the whole time? Like it just never really made any sense to me with when they chose to make the switch to Tua last year when Fitz and the team was playing well. And then the times they would take Tua out of the game. It's like, well, you already made that decision to put him in. Like, don't you want to see what you have in him? Don't you want to let this pay dividends in the future where either he brings your team back or he doesn't, but he at least learns from it? And then this year, like, I mean, it was that case of what last week he was dressed for. And I'm going, wait a second, like he's healthy enough to go in an emergency situation, but not to start. And then he goes in and he plays better than Jacoby did once he got into the game. So I honestly feel like it's this. If the Dolphins end up moving on from Brian Flores at some point in the future, whether this season goes into a tailspin or they don't end up achieving what they hope to in the future, this will be, to me at least, at the top of my list for reasons as to why. Because I think he's botched this entire situation with even seeing what they have in Tua as a quarterback.
And you already know, everybody knows, Tua knows, everybody in the building knows that they flirted with Deshaun Watson and what they were willing to give up for Deshaun Watson and almost made that trade. Like, I don't know what that would be like. If you knew your wife was negotiating with somebody else, that maybe she would leave you for that person, but then it fell through, like, how would you feel showing up every day going, "Hi, honey, how are you?" I mean, right?
No, it wasn't flirting. They went speed dating. Like they essentially went speed dating.
They swiped right.
Yeah, they swiped. Like it's like your wife going out to one of those speed dating things that we used to have pre-COVID. And you're like, "Oh, hey, babe, how was your night? What'd you do?" "Oh, I don't know. I met 10 eligible bachelors who I was like potentially talking to. I found one that I really liked, but we didn't really have much time. You only get 5 minutes per conversation, then you got to rotate." It was like, yeah, it's one of those bizarre things when you just made this decision to draft him. And I always just say this, like, I think the league always lacks patience. Fan bases have even less. But with quarterbacks, understanding that like it's the one position that you need time, you need experience to develop. And I don't know that Tua's had that time and an opportunity to truly develop. And I don't know that the organization can have a true picture of what he is or what he isn't. You know, if they wanted a guy who was more of a product that was ready to go right away, they should just try to go find a veteran quarterback they could go get or trade for with that pick in the draft instead of drafting a guy that's a rookie. Like all these quarterbacks coming out of the draft need work. They need some seasoning. So I never really understand that when they just want to move on from that decision right away. Look, Deshaun Watson's an extreme talent. Any team that has interest in him as a football player obviously has to do their due diligence if he's on the market. But there's still a lot to be figured out off the field. Yeah. And also, by the way, I don't think this is done. Like, I think in the offseason, whatever was on the table will probably still be on the table. It just depends on the legal situation that he's in.
If I told you back in August, these are some of the headlines that would emerge in the NFL. Cam Newton would be back with the Panthers. Odell Beckham would be a Ram. Jets fans would be excited about a young quarterback named Mike White. John Gruden would no longer be coaching the Raiders. Jordan Love would start a game, but it wouldn't be due to an Aaron Rodgers injury, and the Chiefs would be in last place in the AFC West. Where would you start where you go, I wouldn't believe that headline?
The Chiefs would be last in the AFC West. I'll be honest with you.
Wow.
Everything you threw at me, let's look at obviously the situation with John Gruden, the Raiders is terrible. It's despicable. But I do feel like there was a sense for the direction that team was going from a win-losses perspective that at some point someone's got to kind of, hold them accountable. Clearly that's not why he's not there anymore. But, and even with Odell Beckham, there's kind of always been that, like, is he happy in Cleveland? Potential trade rumors or how this is going to work out. The fact that he got released and cut is a different way of getting to that. Cam and his journey back to Carolina. First off, I'm happy for him. I'm glad he got paid, got the contract he got paid. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like there's a lot of us. But who were they
negotiating against, Brady?
Well, no, that's a good question. I don't know if it was anyone, but that's the situation that they were in. It's like they don't have to negotiate anyone, but they're negotiating with essentially PJ Walker for that period of time right now, where they're still not technically out of the playoff on the NFC. Like outside of like about 5 or 6 teams in the NFC, like that last wild card spot, the last 2, it's kind of wide open. So they might feel like, hey, defensively, we got a good team. We could still stay in this thing. We just need a quarterback to guide the ship there. And Cam's our best option. And so they weren't negotiating versus anyone else, but they were negotiating versus staring down the rest of the season of not being potentially in the playoff hunt. I mean, that's what they're negotiating against.
Okay, so you get rid of Cam, then you bring in his replacement, and then you pay Teddy Bridgewater $35 million. Then you get rid of him. Then you trade for Sam Darnold. You bring him in. You guarantee next year's contract of $19 million. You pass on Justin Fields. So now you're bringing in Cam. You brought in Cam's replacement, then the replacement to Cam's replacement, to now another replacement for Cam's replacement. Now you bring in Cam to replace Cam.
God, I want to be Cam's replacement so bad because they all get paid, right? like is that the moral of the story right now? I mean, think about how much David Tepper and right now is paying out in Carolina because Teddy Bridgewater's not even there. He's still getting paid. You bring in Sam Darnold and PJ Walker, and it just all comes full circle.
Are you the same age as Matt Barkley? Because they brought in Matt Barkley to play.
He's younger than I am.
Okay.
Yeah, he's younger than I am. So trust me, I wish, but maybe I should just give them a call and be like, hey, services are still out there. If you want to shell out a little extra money too while you're paying everyone now, I'd love to sign up for that.
When's the last time somebody reached out to you about playing?
It would have been back when I was, I think in 2014. Would have been back when I was, at that point I was transitioning to broadcasting, but there was still kind of some interest. And honestly, I think once I was presented with the opportunity I was at Fox, and then when you'd kind of talk to some of the teams and their interest was, they were interested, but nothing where it was anything significant. And I didn't want to just go into a training camp and be a camp arm. I felt like what Fox was offering me at that time to do was intriguing. It was a great opportunity, something that like I didn't necessarily realize how special it was at the time or what it would build into. But clearly, it was something that I respected enough to say, I'm going to jump into this next career and take this opportunity.
Who's the best quarterback on the Fox said?
I mean, I would say me. I mean, look, I got that. Like, I think every quarterback has that Mike White to them, where Mike White's come out and said publicly, like, I felt like I should have been the first player taking the draft. Like, every quarterback feels that way about their play and about themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't have played at the NFL level or wouldn't have the ability to. Like, even if you like, I think sometimes what impresses me the most is the guys who are so overly confident and they think they can make every throw and they think they can make every play. But like, objectively speaking, you're looking at them going, that he definitely can't do that. But like, those are the guys that tend to succeed at moments because they believe in their abilities even when everyone else doesn't. And that's why, like, whether it's me or anyone else, Mike White in this case, that's why they're such good stories, is because the journey to get there is a lonely journey. And he's probably the only one. Even his parents have probably at some point in time not believed that he was going to be able to do in his one start and change what he's done so far.
He's Brady Quinn, Fox Sports College and NFL studio and game analyst. How does this not work out with Odell and the Rams?
It's a tough question to answer because I think it's going to work out. I mean, the stars have aligned for it to work out. He's with a great play caller. He's with a quarterback who they're going to distribute the football and get him the football. You could complain about, well, what happens if he doesn't get enough targets or touches? And he might not in comparison to Cooper Kupp, for example. I think he'll be competitive as far as targets with Robert Woods. But Odell strikes me as the type of person. I think we all have these people like that we work with or in our lives. When they come into work, like whatever's going on in their personal life, some people can compartmentalize and not bring that to work. Other people can't. Like Odell strikes me as the type of person that has a hard time, if he's not happy outside of football, being able to come in and be in that work environment and be the type of guy that's enjoyable to be around. And I also don't think he's going to excel if that's the case. Look, he's got a house in LA. He's got interest outside of football. I just think the way Sean McVay handles that team and how he'll fit into that team is a perfect scenario for him. So I don't think it goes bad. Like, I think he found himself into the perfect situation for him to resurrect things in his career.
How does Matthew Stafford approach this relationship?
It's one in which I think, look, you get him on board, you're happy to have him. But I think he knows, and obviously he came to the Cleveland Browns, a situation where they were in the playoff hunt. Obviously, the Rams are squarely in the playoff hunt, divisional hunt. So, you're just trying to get them up to speed. Like, if anything, if they don't have a prior relationship, you're just trying to get to know the person. What motivates him, what makes him tick, what he likes, what he doesn't like, how he sees the game. All those things, because you've got to get up to speed and build that chemistry in a short amount of time.
But he's going to want his touches, Brady, because that's how you get the next contract. He doesn't get a contract by being just a good team player. He gets a contract by, let me show the world what I can still do. And if
you get a contract too, when you win. If this carries on to winning a Super Bowl, everyone looks better when you win a Super Bowl. Whether you're as good as you think or not, you're a world champ.
Yeah.
So as much as he wants his touches and targets, which he was still the most targeted player for the Browns, like, we tend to forget that. He was still the most targeted player. It just didn't quite work out. So he'll get his targets, he'll get his touches. But I think if you're preaching him on success and them being able to go and win a Super Bowl, and back to my initial point, like, in order to get him those touches, you still have to know the person and player. And so you still have to understand, like, his nonverbal communication, how he moves, how he gets open, how he sees zone coverages, what he likes, what he doesn't like. Like, you still have to get all that down in order to get him those touches. So it's honestly a lot of trying to hang around each other as much as you possibly can. If you're Matt Stafford and Odell Beckham, like, you're trying to become best friends, or speed dating, if you will, using that analogy again, like, as fast as humanly possible.
Fox Big Noon kickoff in Waco, Texas. It's number 13 Baylor, number 8 Oklahoma. How big is this game for Oklahoma?
It's huge, because this is now their case for building their resume to get within the top 4. They're that, undefeated team that's kind of probably feel disrespected. And yet, since Caleb Williams has taken over as their quarterback, the freshman quarterback, this offense has been unstoppable. Now, defensively, they've suffered some injuries and they struggled at times, but this is the case now for Oklahoma to make that run. They've got to beat Baylor. They'll eventually have to beat Oklahoma State and then win presumably versus probably Oklahoma State again in the Big 12 championship game, to get that resume where they needed to be undefeated and be a part of the conversation to play for a national championship.
Safe travels. Always great to talk to you. Thank you. Have a great weekend, Brady.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That's Brady Quinn. You can catch him, Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, alongside Lamar Arrington, Jonas Knox. That's Fox Sports Radio, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. That precedes our show. And